Hello and welcome, everyone. This is The Future Belongs to Creators. I am one of your co-hosts, Miguel, and I'm here with my normal co-host, Charlie, and a special guest, Ben, who is not Haley.
Hello, I'm not Haley.
Yeah.
And it's more special than me. I'm just normal, you know.
Yeah.
Have the novelty factor.
Well,
Yeah.
All right, we're 12 seconds into this, and I've already put my foot in my mouth. So, all right,
Gonna be a great episode.
yeah, setting the tone. All right. Well, anyways, I'm really excited for today because I just love Q&As in general, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Because I feel like instead of hammering on one topic, we can kind of jump around a little bit, and I feel a little more free and loose, you know. So we will be talking. We have some specific kind of ideas to dance around, but we also are going to, towards the end, update each other on our side hustles, because I think we all kind of have some updates on that front on some level. So anywho, all right. Well, first of all, Ben, Charlie, how are you guys?
Ben, you're the guest. Why don't you go first?
I was going to say ladies first.
Yeah. Let's try.
I'm doing great. I am doing green, as they say at ConvertKit. I'm feeling really good. I had caffeinated coffee today, though, so I'm just pumped. And this should be a really good topic. As I'll get into later, I'm not as active in my side hustle, but I still think about it a ton. And I don't really have a way to express that, so this will be a cool way to express some of that. Charlie, how you doing?
I'm doing well also. Yep, also doing green according to our traffic light system. And I've sort of shifted gears in my side hustles over the past month and like maybe for the next month as well to work on something that's like a little bit bigger than my regular YouTube video every week. And so I don't know, it feels good. It feels different. It's been harder than I expected, but we'll get into that later as well. Yeah, feeling good. How about you, Miguel?
I am also green. I've been keeping really busy at work, but also my hobby, which is also kind of like my quasi side hustle, has been really active lately. And I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to my hobbies and things that I do on the side, I kind of go through phases of like ups and down when I'm really excited to do stuff. And then there are times where I just like, I kind of hate it a little bit. Like I want nothing to do with it. Like I'm actually coming out of a slump because for the about a month ago, if you were to ask me a month ago or further back a few months, you would have asked me, "Hey, how's the woodworking thing going?" And I would have just been like, I haven't been doing anything. Like there is no sawdust in the garage because I was just kind of over it for a while. Like it was and I don't even know exactly why. I mean, it could have been a plethora of things, busy with work and I don't really have much left of myself to put into a side hustle or, you know, I just, I don't know. I just kind of, you reach a creative dead end sometimes and you're like, well, I've already
Yeah.
built everything I can build out of wood in this house. If I do any more, it'll kind of look ridiculous in here. Like you are just in a museum or a showroom of like wooden pieces. So there's
Mm.
only so much you can really do before you're kind of overkilling it for your own place. So, I started like make stuff for my mom or a neighbor or whatever. But eventually I'm just kind of like, but things are picking back up. And well, anyways, I don't want to rant too long, but I'll explain why things are picking back up a little later. But
I
how do
also
you
just
guys? How
can
about
I
you
just
guys? Do you feel
say
that way?
I really want to say I love the term like there's no sawdust in the garage. Can we make that a thing for like my side hustles have been dead for a while, like I've been working on them.
I love that.
I just really like that phrase and I want to try use it. Also, can we just say as well that anyone listening, tuning in live right now, because we do record these shows live at 12:30 Eastern time every Wednesday. If you have questions about your own side hustles, about being a creator, about ConvertKit, whatever you want to do, leave them in the chat right now and we can get to them throughout the show as well.
Yeah,
just wanted to make that
definitely.
clear. It's not just us asking each other questions, although we can start there. Miguel, you mentioned your side hustle is more of a hobby. I don't know, like how are you feeling about that? Are you thinking that you want to turn this hobby into something more, something that makes money, something that builds an audience behind it? What's your current state of mind on that?
So for the longest time, I have constantly talked myself out of doing anything like that
Hmm.
because of the way that I saw it was okay, if I'm going to make money as as a woodworker, then that means I'm going to be it's going to take a lot of time because someone's going to say, "Oh, build me a table, build me some chairs, build me this, build me that." And these things it's a very labor and time intensive thing. And I don't want to get buried in a bunch of work and I'll get to a point where I'm disillusioned and already told 3 people I'm making them something. And so now I'm like kind of like slogging through it and it's just like digging it deeper into a place where I'm like, I really don't want to be doing this right now, but I don't want to leave people hanging. So it was like that barrier to commitment.
Hmm.
But then, I started thinking about it as if I back up a little bit, what do I always tend to do? And that's when I build things out of wood is, well, I plan things out. I shop for whatever raw material that I need or hardware or whatever it is. So there's a lot of that goes into it. And perhaps that is the part that I can focus on as far as like my quote unquote side hustle, not the actual final product, but rather sharing some of the process and maybe the sharing of that can be the product. So my best tips on what things to buy and not buy, what mistakes
Mhm.
I've learned from, what tools you don't want to waste $150 on because it's actually a useless tool, or another tool that you have can do the same thing if you just modify it a little bit or use it in a different way. So like stuff like that. So it doesn't have to be a business about like, tell me how big you want your table to be so I can spend all freaking weekend working on something like that. Cause that's not something I want to do. And I learned that. Have you
I re-
guys had that experience or similar?
Yes, I think I have because I very consciously decided that in my side hustles, I'm not interested in doing design freelance work at the moment. And that's because I do design for my job and I like don't want to use up all my design juice. I just think that the tank would be running empty if I tried to freelance as well. And so I do what it sounds like what you're thinking of doing, Miguel, which is instead create content and things that help other people design things for themselves. I'm teaching people to get better at that, and that's what you would be doing too. If you shared your plans and those tips and things, you'd help people make their own table in the size that they wanted it to be in.
So yeah. I'm kind of curious because Miguel has outlined kind of what I've experienced in my own side hustle and stuff like that. Like, even no matter how much you like something, eventually you kind of get sick of it for at least a certain period. Mm-hmm. And if you are a content creator with an audience, you just kind of push through that and keep releasing content on a consistent basis because your audience expects that. And I know that, Miguel, you could like keep producing woodwork every week if you wanted to, even if you're not having a great time with it. So my question is then to Charlie is the times where you've been disillusioned with content creation, even if you've considered it to be really fun in the past, how long do those dips last for you? And do you try and get out of those dips? Is there something you do, or do you just like let it run its course? Or have you thought about just burning it all down during one of those dips?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There honestly has been dark times where I've thought, like, why am I doing this? Like, why? No one is making me do this. I could just stop, like no one is forcing me. That is a choice I have. But then I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I really enjoy it sometimes, I've reached burnout with content creation before from like what you said of pushing through. And like had to take a forced break from it. And since then, I feel like I've gotten better at knowing when it's time to take a break. It sucks that you have to go through a burnout to learn that, but like obviously like that just happens sometimes. And I think I've just had to come to terms with the fact that the cost of the long term of like doing this sustainably for a long time, staying interested in it, keeping it being something that I enjoy, means I will lack consistency at times, and maybe the YouTube algorithm will not be my best friend at times. Like right now, I'm in the middle of I think I said before, a 2-month break from uploading YouTube videos, making YouTube videos. And I know that when I come back, because I am planning on coming back, that the first few that I upload are probably going to tank because the YouTube algorithm will be like, what? We haven't seen anything from this person for a while. Does anyone want to see this anymore? I don't know. Let's test it out a little bit. And like, that's okay. That's the price that I am paying for taking a break to work on some other things, sucks that has to be a choice we make, but personally, I think it's a good one.
That's super interesting. Cause I think I've, just to give you a 5-second synopsis of my creative stuff is I ran a podcast for 2 years called Shut Up Brain Podcast. Then I kind of transitioned to more YouTube stuff. And then earlier in 2021, I was like, fuck all this. I'm not doing anything anymore. And so I just, I don't do anything anymore when it comes to my side hustle. And I think that is partially because I pushed through a few different burnouts and a variety of other factors. I mean, we did go through a big pandemic and stress and whatnot.
Yeah. That's a little thing that's happened. Yeah.
But it is really interesting to me to see both of you, Miguel with kind of a side hustle / hobby that, no one expects you to produce it except for yourself. You're just doing it for your own enjoyment. And then Charlie on the other hand of it, where you do have an audience, and how you both deal with the same problem.
Good call out. Yeah. Where is your head at now, Ben? Like halfway through 2021, are you starting to think about picking something back up again?
Yeah, that's the super interesting thing. Is probably a few times a week, I'm like, oh man, I want to create a podcast episode, or I want to create a YouTube video. And I always think about that. And that's been happening for the last 2 months. Like I've been having a big desire to do that. And at first when I had those desires and I started to like play out in my head, okay, I'm actually going to do this, I started to get that bitter feeling that I didn't like. But now that feeling is not really there. Now I'm just like, I really want to do this, but I'm forcing myself not to. My unofficial timeline is to not produce any content for the rest of this year and then to start again in 2022. But yeah, I'm just not quite sure. And the other thing that I've noticed is with my content, it's a lot of self-improvement stuff, and I just kind of share my own story when it comes to like anxiety and meditation. And I noticed over the past few months, when I've been doing things for my own mental health, I've had like, oh, I should share this in my podcast, or I had this interesting experience, I want to share this with people. And then going, wait, no, this is just for me. Like I can just, no one
Do
else
this.
has to
Yeah.
know this. I can just do this for me. And it's been interesting to realize how I've programmed my brain for content production.
Oh yeah, I hear that so much. Ever since I started streaming my design work, and like just the response that got to stream, like not that I'm getting big numbers or anything, but it's more like a core group of really passionate people would join in my Twitch live streams. And I sort of feel like I want to give them more. And like just this morning, I was working on my Webflow site for a side hustle, and I was like, oh man, like I should be streaming this. Should I wait to work on this until I can stream it? You know, like when it's a better time. And it feels like a waste to just work on the website without streaming it. And I was like, look, mate, like if this is when you're feeling compelled to work on this and get it done, just do it. And don't worry about that. Like there is always more content to be created. But I've started to think in that way too. It's really interesting that that you mentioned that.
You know, and that's one of the things that I've also noticed is like when I was thinking of, oh, well, what if I was courting the idea of what if I made a YouTube video of me
Ooh.
building this thing and like kind of showing you the step by step, because I watch a lot of those videos myself.
Yeah.
Whenever there's like a certain type of thing I want to build, I'm like, all right, I'm going to watch this guy build it for 15 minutes on YouTube just so I can like maybe steer clear of some of the pitfalls and save myself some time, mistakes, having to go buy more wood because I cut it wrong or whatever. And then I think about that, and then I'm like, this is already going to take all weekend, and now setting up a shot and then like moving the camera and making sure it's like that people can see what I'm doing, and then like providing the proper commentary. And then like I have no experience like really making a YouTube video. So then I just like instantly talk myself out of it, because I'm just like, oh, I'm going to take this thing that I already feel like takes a long time to do and then like triple it in length. No thanks. I'm just going to build the thing and tell people I did it and share a photo when I'm done. Best I can do. It's like that meme of the pawn people. It's like best I can do is before and after photo.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. It started out with me thinking, oh, I've even actually filmed a few things, and I've like got like 30 minutes into it, and I'm just like, fuck this. That's right. Second F-bomb. I'm done. This is rated R now.
Haley leaves us for one episode and things just go wild.
and then the shit hits the fan.
Oh no, an S-bomb.
No,
Jeez.
shit is okay for PG.
Okay. Wow. Okay. To get us back on the rails, I guess, or at least attempt to. When do you think? Okay, so something I also deal with is I can very easily talk myself out of a lot of things, because even though I'm a really motivated person, I do procrastinate and I can be lazy at times, especially when there's no outside external factors like making me do something, no imposed deadlines or anything like that. When is this feeling of like, oh, no, that's too much work. It's going to prevent me from making it, making the woodworking thing or whatever. When is that a gut instinct you listen to? And when is it one that we should push through and to make the thing happen, to serve our future selves? I don't know. Any thoughts?
That's like such a tough question. Like for me, the end goal, I think for a lot of creators is, I started most of my creative endeavors when I had a job I didn't really like. I'm like, okay, this could eventually be my full-time gig. And then if the money doesn't come right away, as it often doesn't, you have to start kind of shifting your mentality. Well, maybe I'm just doing this to help people. And yeah, I think that's a really good question, Charlie. Like, when do you push through that feeling?
We don't have to have an answer either, by the way. I just wanted to call it out as like this is a tension point, right? That we have to be aware of as creators, is not to let ourselves get lazy at times. Because there's sometimes when you need to take a break for self-care, for mental health, to avoid burnout. And there's sometimes when you have to push through if it's truly something you want to achieve. And it's hard to know what the difference is and when you should push and when you shouldn't.
Yeah, that's like a question I've been dealing with in my personal life for like the last 6 months. And like, I'll think about like, man, I should probably go to the gym. I said I was going to do it this many times this week, but I'm like, I'm not feeling it. And my leg is a little sore. Like, should I push it? And I feel like I'm starting to come up with rules for myself. Like, okay, if I'm not like actually sick, like I could probably do this. I don't have to kill this workout, but I could do it. And I think you don't have to kill every piece of content. You can just produce it.
Yeah, for the habit and the motivation purposes of it. Yeah. That's a good point. I like that.
Do you have any rules like that, Charlie, or even Miguel?
Thoughts, Miguel?
Yeah, I feel like when I'm trying to control behavior of mine that I don't like, I try to set like predetermined rules. I feel like that is usually kind of because I'm kind of holding myself accountable to myself. So if I try to nip those things in the bud, I use a similar approach as you've been. But like I agree with what you said. And I like what you said about not everything has to be like this. Not every video you do, not every whatever it is that you do has to be the absolute best thing you've ever done to date. That's an impossible thing that you're inevitably going to be disappointed in yourself if that is your goal. Like there's no freaking way you set a new world record for best video you've ever made every time you make a video. Like It's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's fair.
One thing I want to kind of jump in. This is like, this is my outlet because I don't have a podcast. This is like a mini podcast within a podcast right now, like mini shut up.
We're here. We're your therapist. It's fine.
But no, I think Ben's our therapist. Isn't that the way it works? Yeah.
We're all each other's therapists.
That sounds very dangerous.
Continue, Ben.
There is this one idea I've been liking. I read a book last year called Thinking in Bets, Making Smarter Decisions When You Don't Have All the Facts. It's by Annie Duke, who is a world like poker champion or something. And she talks about with poker, it's basically a game of making decisions all of the time. So you have a hand and it's basically, okay, is this hand more likely to win or more likely to lose? And if you can make enough good decisions, then you will make money. And I've found that to be a very helpful framework for my own decisions. Like, okay, if I don't want to go to the gym right now, but if I don't go to the gym, is that going to lead most likely to a good outcome or a bad outcome? And that has like allowed me to cut through some of the like lazy Ben attitude and be like, well, most likely if I go to the gym, it'll most likely be a good outcome. There is like a 10% chance I might like injure myself really bad. It'd be really bad, but that's very unlikely. So that's been helpful. Check out that book if you're interested.
I just wrote that down. I definitely want to read that book. That sounds really interesting. The only mental model I can think of to share really here is that I try and move something forward for my side hustles every single weekday. And I surround myself. I'm like looking around. I have my analog note cards from UgMonk in front of me. I have
look at me.
There we go. I have my bullet journal. Like I have things in view all the time of like stuff I could be doing on my side hustles, so that I'm never having to like sit and question, okay, well, what do I need to do then? Okay, yeah, I should do something. I don't know what to do. That can't be an excuse. There's a list right in front of me. I can just pick the easiest thing on it and do that and make sure I'm doing at least one thing every single day. That's really the way I've been approaching it lately, especially when motivation has been hard, has just been, okay, the train is moving at a much slower pace than we would prefer it to be, but at least it's still moving forward and it's not like stuck in the station. And there's no sawdust in the garage or whatever the phrase was from before.
So actually I have two questions for both of you.
Okay.
So how important are longer term goals and how often do you think about them? Like for Miguel, obviously there's a skill when it comes to woodworking and maybe you have a goal of crafting. I can't think of a famous woodworking thing, but a really nice chair. I
was going to say an Eames chair. Can you woodwork an Eames chair?
Like, do you guys have goals, long-term goals that you think about, or are you mainly more in the trenches most of the time?
I'll start. And it's not actually a direct answer to your question because it's funny that you asked
very
this.
Political.
It's not very it's not very yes or no for me. I just listened to several podcasts and about like some of them are political and whatnot, but one of the ones that I listened to is actually the one with Rainn Wilson and Reza Aslan. The one is called oh shoot, what are they? I'm blanking right now.
I don't know
I'll
either.
think of it in a second. It's okay, but it's the guy who plays Dwight Schrute. That's who
Yeah.
Rainn Wilson is, it's called Metaphysical Milkshake. That's what it's called. And I love that podcast. And they kind of just tackle sort of like big overarching questions about maybe things that aren't necessarily like quantifiable. They had a guest on there who's like a social psychologist. And one of the things that they said that really stuck with me, she said, sometimes we start thinking about the future so much, but you don't know what the future is going to be. So then you get frustrated and you get anxious because you don't know how to prepare for something that you don't know that will happen. And then some of us look too far back, and you get stuck because you're constantly like rethinking the past or reliving the past. And the only thing you can actually take action on is the present. So you can have a bunch of goals for the future, but that's assuming that a set of things goes the way that you assume that they're going to. And when they don't, your ability to pivot in the moment really kind of determines whether or not you're headed towards success or not. And I just thought that was really interesting because my partner, she's a big planner for the future, and I'm very much an in the moment kind of person. So we work really well with each other because she kind of like, she's the person on the top of the mast looking at the horizon, kind of making sure we're not going to run into the wrong thing or an iceberg or whatever. But I'm, kind of the person that's just kind of like low at the ground and just like making sure the ship's working, kind of the thing. So it kind of works out for our dynamic. And so all of that to say, I don't have a lot of long-term plans as a result. I just kind of have like a general idea of the direction I want to move in. But like, as far as like specific action items outside of like a to-do list that I make, because I tend to forget things and I live to check the box next to a to-do list item. Like,
Same.
oh my God, that's like the like mental
Dopamine hit.
endorphins. Oh yeah. I get a solid dopamine hit from just getting to exit out, so that's kind of how I keep myself accountable to what I want to do. And like, otherwise I just forget things. But outside of that, when somebody asks you the question, what's your big 5-year plan? I just freeze. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, how can anyone have that plan? Like, what kind of a psychopath has everything planned out for like 5 years?
And then I go and I'm like, well, here's my 5-year plan.
And then you go with our coworker, Steven, who's got his entire life planned out for the next 15 years. So whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like, first of all, I really like that answer, Miguel, and I think that's really good perspective. I don't have plans for the future. It's more like I have goals for what I want my life to be and what I want to be doing, how I want to be spending my time. And I try and make decisions in the present that will help get me closer to that end goal. And I feel like my future plans, I did used to spend way too much time thinking in the future, like you were saying, Miguel. And I think it's because I was treating it as if it had a timeline of reaching this goal, this end state, Whereas now I feel like I'm much more loose with it, in that I'm like, I know that this like state of living that I want to be in, it's going to happen for me eventually. And maybe it won't happen until I'm like 60 years old. But I know it's going to happen eventually, and that's what I'm working towards. And if I can work hard now and make it happen sooner, that's great. If the decisions I make, to reference what you were saying, Ben, about the poker book, if they all line up and lead to that happening faster, then that's awesome. And I would prefer it if it happened faster. But it's more about knowing what I want the end point to be, but being a bit more flexible in what the journey is that I take to get there, and just trusting that I'm trying to pick the right direction at any one time. If I find I've made the wrong choice, that's okay. I can like change path and turn off and try head towards it again. What about you?
I think I'm pretty futuristic. If you've ever taken the Strengths Finder assessment, like futuristic is one of my things. I'm constantly thinking about the future, but I'm trying to live much more in the present, more like Miguel, and paying more attention to like my small decisions, like you were saying, Charlie. Like, hey, is this decision helping me move forward in the right direction? I think a part of that is because I don't have a lot of long-term goals right now. Like maybe 6 months in the future, I want to do X, Y, or Z. But yeah, not a whole lot of long-term goals. And I'm enjoying it a lot because that's not typically what I want, what I've had in my life. Normally I'm much more like, hey, I want to hit this goal. I want to do 100 podcast episodes. I want to generate this much revenue. And just instead focusing in goals that are achievable in the moment. Like my biggest goals for most of my hobbies and stuff like that is to enjoy it while I'm doing it. Like you can see a
I
cello,
like that. That's cool.
cello back there. Like it's very easy to practice the cello for 45 minutes, an hour, and hate every second that you're doing it because it's so challenging. But you can also play for 45 minutes, an hour, and really enjoy it too. It's just a puzzle. And so you can decide how you want to take that puzzle. And so I'm really doing a lot of work on myself to enjoy the moment when I'm in it, even if it's a difficult moment.
I really like that. We've had Shikar say in the chat that they just make plans for the next 3 months, so quarterly, because it's easier to set goals that way without slacking too much.
Yeah.
I like that approach. I tried to do that for a couple of years, but I found that I just way overcommitted myself every single quarter. I don't know why. I've been making YouTube videos for nearly 8 years, and still I have not learned the limits of like my free time and what I can actually achieve on the side of working like quite a challenging day job. So yeah, I'm constantly disappointing myself with the deadlines I set with my side hustles. Like I thought I'd have my book written by now, y'all. It is nowhere close to being written.
Famous writer's block.
Is it writer's block, or is it like lack of time, or is it lack of motivation?
It's lack of motivation. I haven't even attempted to write anything for like 2 months. I completely shifted track to like things that were more achievable in the short term because this book project just felt so large and complicated. And I don't know, it's like completely new to me to attempt to write a book. And so there's so much that I don't know that I just felt like I sunk into my comfort zone of what I do know, you know. And I don't know. I was a little disappointed in myself for that to start with, but I'm working on the second season of my interview podcast right now and really enjoying it. So that's okay. But I do know that writing the book is something I want to do, and that I sometimes feel guilty about it because I'm like, I'm letting my future self down by not working on this right now, you know, because it is going to take a long time. It's not something I can just be like, right, I'm going to do it this weekend and get it done. And so I need to be putting in like the hours to build it up. I don't have a good solution or a nice bow to wrap up on this, just to say that I have sucked at writing my book so far this year.
Well, I feel like a lot of people have a hard time jumping into work because, well, so procrastination always often gets a bad rap. But actually, like a lot of the times, procrastination for me is I don't know where to start. And then once I like get a runway and I know what to do, everything sort of kind of tends to fall into place because I build momentum and I'm just like, okay, cool, I know what I'm doing. Then I'm reaching the end of this, which means that now this other thing is possible. So I'll move into that when I'm done, and then sort of so on and so forth. But I find myself kind of procrastinating things with my hobbies or my work or whatever because I just kind of don't know where to begin. Because it's kind of like that feeling you have when there's like a blank canvas in front of you and someone just says, draw something. You're like, well, what do you want me to draw? You want me to draw a fish? Do you want me to draw a house? What do you want me to draw? Like if you narrow the scope a little bit, then you kind of like your mind has sort of a path to go down. But if you have complete 100% open possibility, I feel like that's the moment that I freeze up the most. And
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because I don't know what to do. And I was a good friend of mine. He's a excellent artist. He's a muralist, and he's done tons of giant murals around town. And one of the most gifted artists that I've ever seen, and he can do all kinds of different stuff. And I was talking to him about this. I was saying, since you're an artist and people expect that of you, if I were to just give you a blank sheet of paper and say, draw me something cool, like, do you have problem getting started? And he's like, that is terrifying. Don't ever say that. Don't ever give me a job with that description. I was like, I will know. Like, so it just felt nice. I'm like, even this guy who like literally like, he's an artist, his artistry pays his bills, and he still is just like dreads just complete freedom like that. Like if someone wants you to do a mural and they say, do something, with animals or whatever. It's like, at least, he's kind of like moving in that direction. But just like paint something cool and it's 2 stories tall, he's like, dear God, so.
Yeah.
I think what's also interesting, I don't know if there's a question, but just an observation, is the unconscious judgments that we can place on ourselves when we have a
Yes.
task ahead of us that we know we can accomplish. Like, that you can write 500 words today if you wanted, but the fact that you are choosing not to, and the judgment that you are placing on yourself because of that, I think that can be, I know that was a burden for me that led to burnout for sure, is because every day that I didn't do X, Y, or Z, I'd be like, well, I'm probably a bad person because I didn't produce this, and I know I can produce this. So the mental health side of things of being a content creator is probably even more fascinating than creating the content itself, because they say that starting a business or being a creator, it makes you a different person by doing it, and hopefully a better person. It's like a growth thing.
Yeah.
Do you experience that, Charlie?
Yeah, I think I feel like I'm having a moment of realization as you're saying that, Ben. I think I might be slightly self-sabotaging a little bit in not progressing with my book. And I think it's because in a past life, let's say 10 years ago, I ran a clothing company. And it started off with a bang. It was super popular on Tumblr back in the day. I think we've talked about my clothing company on the show before. But yeah, I was selling t-shirts all over the world and it was going well. But the more I felt like the harder I tried with it, and the harder I tried to make a really cool collection with a theme that ran through it, that I got less and less sales. And so I was like, this sucks. I'm putting more effort into this. And it's bombing, by the end, the last collection I released hardly got any sales. And I think that a little part of me is well, if you never finish this book, you never have to be disappointed by the lack of sales that you may or may not get with it, So I think there's probably a bit of that in there. And I don't think that's valid. I think I have a good audience for marketing design. I think that I made a digital product last year. I sold a font and it did well in my book. And so, yeah, I don't think it's valid, but I think that's where it may be a little bit of self-sabotage coming from.
Interesting.
Shit.
Are you working with a coach or anything like that, like a writing coach or?
No, it might help me if I did write. I do want to work with an editor on it, but I feel like I want to get my thoughts in order first and get my first draft written, and then I want to go to someone else and be help me restructure this, make this better, that sort of thing. Yeah. But maybe I need to talk to someone sooner. I don't know.
It's that Homer Simpson quote, right? It was when he's talking to Bart and he says, "You tried and you failed, boy. The lesson is never try."
Yeah. Exactly. That is the lesson I took from my clothing company. And that is not the lesson I intend to pass on to everyone.
That is not the lesson. Do not take that with you. One thing I wanted to talk about before we wrapped up, talking about when I was talking earlier before about finding the thing about what you do and maybe making that the product instead of the end product itself.
Yep.
I was trying to think of other places where this has happened, and I thought of 2 really good examples. One of them is MailChimp. MailChimp was originally a web design company.
What? Really?
Yeah, but they weren't called MailChimp. The guy who started MailChimp and his partner were originally web designers, and they had this tool on the side that would send emails for their customers as a one-off thing, and they would pay for it via per send rather than a monthly subscription. And it was this little thing on the side that when they looked at the numbers, they saw that their web design company, even though it would bring in $20,000-$30,000 every time they completed a contract, actually wasn't really paying the bills really well. And the one thing that was growing was the interest in this mail thing that they had. And eventually they said, well, okay, so when you look at the charts and the numbers, the one thing that we're doing that's growing is this mail thing. And then it was a hard sell for them because at the end of the day, MailChimp was making them hundreds of dollars, whereas compared to $30,000 a pop, you wouldn't think that that's the thing you want to focus on. But it was the thing that was growing. So then they kind of stopped doing web design and just focused on the MailChimp thing. And well, the rest is history. They're huge now, valued, I think, at over $4 billion or something like that.
Wow.
And another example was Slack. The guy who started Slack was originally a game designer, and Slack was just like this tool that they built in-house so they could communicate more easily between each other. And he brought it over from several different companies as like this like internal communication tool. And eventually it got to the point where they were like, oh, wait, no, this is this weird thing that we made so we could all chat with each other and work together. This is the thing that people want. They don't want the game that I'm designing. This tool eventually became what it is today. And I think recently Slack got bought out by Salesforce for lots and lots of money. So all that to say is like the thing that you're working on, it might be a piece of what you're working on that might actually be the thing that you might want to focus on. And that's what I realized is I was on Etsy early in the morning on Sunday, just like looking around, seeing what like people are making out of wood or whatever. And I realized that, okay, so if I wanted to make a wood bench, like a workbench for my saw, I could either pay someone a bunch of money to make me one. I could make one myself, go through the design process, all that. Or I could go on Etsy and people just sell the plans, like $10 a pop, $10. And here's a plan. It tells you when you go to Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever you go to buy your stuff, you go there. This is how many of everything you need to buy. So no return trips to the store. This is exactly how long you have to cut everything. So basically it's all spelled out for you. And $10 to save you all that time
Absolutely
is well
worth
worth
it.
the money.
Yeah.
Well worth the money. So when you think about it, if I was just making workbenches for people, yeah, I could be making workbenches and selling them at $600-700 each every time I make one. Or I could just sell the plans for that same workbench on Etsy at $10 a pop. And you see how many sales have happened on Etsy. So I'm like, this person has sold this $10 plan 8,700 times. They've made almost 90 grand off of something they designed one time. And now they just sit back and laugh all the way to the bank. So I'm like,
That's
wait a minute.
amazing. Yeah.
Well, I need to rethink what I think my side hustle needs to be. My side hustle doesn't need to be, and that solves my other problem, which is, shit, I'm stuck, all freaking my weekends chewed up. I was going to go to the beach, but with my wife and my friends, but no, I'm not going to do that now because somebody purchased a workbench for me and I'm on the hook.
No,
for
I've got to make
$600.
it. Yeah.
So
I would say one caveat I want to say with this line of thinking is just because it's the thing people are interested in doesn't mean it's the thing you're interested in doing or like focusing on. Because that's what happened to me with like every time I upload a software tutorial video, it gets way more views than everything else. So if I like followed the numbers and was being smart about it, like from that sense, I should make software tutorials. I should make a course about using this piece of software. But that's not what my end goal is, talking about this future state of what I'm doing and how I'm living, what I'm sharing, what I'm talking about, how I'm spending my day. That's not what I want to be doing. And so I don't want to go down that path. And so I'm going to see it, recognize it, and make the choice to go in a different direction. So that's an option too. But I like what you're saying, Miguel, about,
you're totally
it
right.
is a good point.
I actually hate making plans. Most of the time, I don't. Most of the time,
you
I don't
convinced
make.
Miguel to just throw away the side hustle immediately.
I'm just saying, like, most of the time, I don't make
intention.
plans. Most of the time, I just do it in my head. And admittedly, you make more mistakes that way. But the way my mind works is like, I'm not going to spend hours and hours and hours making a plan, or I could just kind of like figure it out as I go just because I'm impatient. And that's just like, I guess, a character flaw of mine that I need to work on. But if I actually took the time to make the plan, it would be something I don't necessarily like to do, but it could possibly be a passive source of income for me.
Yep.
So that might make me want to do the thing I don't want to do, as long as it's not something I have to keep doing in perpetuity. And that's why it was nice, because it's like I just make it one time and then, people can buy it or not. And if they stop buying it, oh well. Or if they never buy it, oh well, it was an experiment. But
yeah, I think I absolutely want to see you do this, Miguel. I think it sounds like a great idea.
Agreed.
What were you going to say, Ben?
I cannot remember.
Must have been important. Ben.
Sorry.
No, it's
On
all right.
that note,
End this podcast with a whimper.
Oh man, well, this was a lot of fun. I I'm really glad that you were able to make it, Ben. And
Yeah,
Charlie
thanks for
was
joining me.
almost not able to make it. Charlie actually, she texted me a picture of her on her scooter saying, "I'm almost back home. Don't worry, I'm going to be there." So it was really fun to see that. So I was pulling for you, but I was like, I hope she's not
I made
rushing
it.
too much. So,
Well, the scooter goes like 20 kilometers an hour. It was great.
oh man. Well, all right, folks. I will see you next week. Probably not Ben though, unless you just feel like coming by. Open invitation if you ever want to come by, Ben. You're always a blast to have on. So
Awesome, thank you.
and we are here as your therapists if you need to unload again.
Perfect, thank
And
you.
we would like you to be here to be ours. Thank you.
All right, folks. Have a nice rest of your week. Take care and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.